The New York Rangers definitely had a very disappointing 2024-25 regular season, but this team is going to be heading into this upcoming season now, of course, with the intention on getting right back into the playoffs. And with that being said, there is definitely, of course, one big way this team can get back on track to their winning ways and can get back into the playoffs. And that, of course, is having some of their players that maybe had a bit of a down season or, just didn't quite play up to their normal standards. If they can get back on track throughout this upcoming season, then I definitely think this team should easily be able to make playoffs. And then after that, of course, we'll have to see what they do. But this team should be a playoff team for sure this upcoming season. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at 3 different players that I think throughout this past regular season, 2 of them didn't have their best overall years, and I think kind of played down compared to what they've kind of been doing in the past for the Rangers. And there's also another player that I think played pretty solid overall and played pretty good at moments for sure, but I do think might have another level to his game to maybe kind of just become that next level of player to really help this team out a whole lot. So let's get right into it here, and we're going to start off by talking about Igor Shesterkin, who I think it's pretty obvious. Him, for his standards, definitely did not have a great regular season this past one, of course, and especially after signing that mega historic goalie contract, giving him the highest paid goalie contract in NHL history, $11.5 million cap hit. It is a humongous deal, of course. He definitely didn't quite live up to those standards, especially after signing that deal, but I do think going forward, Igor should definitely be better than what we saw from this past season. And now that this Rangers team has kind of revamped this decor quite a bit, I think this team should be a whole lot better. I think it should be a whole lot better defensively. And with that being said, with those 2 things coming into effect, it'll obviously help Igor out a ton. If this team in general is just better all around, even offensively, they're going to have more puck position. Maybe they're going to have more kind of chances and pressure in the other zone instead of being stuck in their own zone, which, we have seen, of course, a lot of moments there. And I think upgrading the decor should definitely help a lot with that as well. So, I do think this team has upgraded in certain areas that definitely needed it. Now, is this team perfect? By no means. They still have Carson Soucy, more than likely, it seems like, being that second pair left-handed defenseman to begin this season. So there are definitely still some holes with this team and some problems that still are going to need to be fixed if they really want to go out there and, make a really big kind of push for the cup, of course. But I do think there is definitely reason to think that Igor can get back on track. And if he does, that should really help this Rangers team out a ton, because he was just not great this past season. He wasn't terrible. He was still one of the better goalies in the league and was still like a above average starter, was still, a top 10 or 15 goalie for sure, but he wasn't that Vezina caliber guy. It wasn't that not max, but like the highest paid goalie contract in NHL history. It wasn't quite that standard. So I think going into this year, now that he's fully done with that contract, it's all off his mind, I'm sure, at least I hope by now. And that was, of course, my kind of thought process and hope that once he signed that deal throughout this past season, right after that, he'd kind of get back into form, of course, into his kind of normal elite form. Didn't quite happen, but I still have faith in him doing that. And at the end of the day, he is a guy who, it seems like, does play his absolute best hockey when the lights shine brightest in the playoffs, when things matter most. And you take a look at a guy like Connor Hellebuyck, who, yeah, he went out there and won the Vezina, he won the Hart, he won all this stuff. And at the end of the day, guess what happened come playoff time? They lost. They didn't go far at all. They did not do a whole lot, right? They did decent. They didn't do too bad, but their goalie specifically was not very good. And even the advanced numbers say he wasn't great. The normal numbers, save percentage, that kind of stuff, goals against average, those don't say he did great. And it's now been like 3 or 4 consecutive playoff runs where he has had a below 900 save percentage. It has been quite terrible for Connor Hellebuyck. So that's where, at the end of the day, I don't mind having a guy like Igor who, maybe he's not going to be running for the Vezina every single regular season, but I can pretty much guarantee he's going to show up when things matter most in the playoffs, as he has consistently done so far. And if he keeps that up, I still think this contract will be worth it. But of course, I do want to see him get back on track, which I absolutely think he will. Maybe he won't win the Vezina this year, but I do think with Gavrikov coming in there, with getting rid of guys like Trouba and Keandre Miller fully now, I do think this overall kind of team defensively should be a bit better. And if it is, that should definitely help Igor Shesterkin out quite a bit. Moving on now, though, to Mika Zibanejad. This is a player that, of course, definitely had a bit of a down year, and it's been kind of like this for a little bit now. It's kind of felt like the last kind of few seasons, honestly, he's been that kind of step back from where he's been in his past years, but I do think now that he's made the switch to wing, and this past regular season, seeing that switch to wing there, once he started off at center, didn't play great offensively, wasn't putting up great numbers, point total wise, and also wasn't being a great defensive centerman as well. He was kind of a liability at moments, was quite poor defensively at moments. But then once he switched to wing there, I saw a completely different Mika Zibanejad, it felt like. He seemed a lot more energized, he seemed a lot more kind of engaged, and he obviously ended up having almost like, it felt like double the points per game at least, about there, from making that switch from center to wing. So I do think for this upcoming season, if he stays on wing, he should absolutely be a point per game kind of guy, maybe even a 30-something goal kind of player. That is definitely possible while being on the wing alongside JT Miller and potentially Will Cuylle as well. That's kind of the line it seems like right now for the Rangers as one of their top 6 lines, being Cuylle on the left, JT Miller down the middle, and Mika Zibanejad on the right. And if that does happen, I'm all for it. I've been wanting to see that line for quite some time now. That's what I've been kind of projecting and kind of predicting and kind of what I want to see. So I think at the end of the day, if that's what the forward line is or one of the top 6 lines, I am all for it. I think that's a really good way to get a lot out of Zibanejad because you're putting him alongside the captain there who's not going to, be afraid to call guys out up there, taking shifts off. You also got a guy like, JT Miller and Cuylle who are just in general great offensively and both pretty great defensively. So you've got these guys who are both, very energetic players, very physical, tough guys who play with a lot of energy, speed out there. I mean, not the fastest guys in the world, but they're, giving it their all pretty much every time they're out there. And you put them alongside a guy like Mika Zibanejad, well, hopefully that can kind of keep him going there, keep him more engaged, and just keep him playing at an overall better level than what we saw this past season. And next up here, we've got Will Borgen, who I think, of course, was pretty good for this Rangers team this past season, but I do think potentially has another level. Whether or not he'd be able to hit that alongside someone like a, Carson Soucy, I'm not quite 100% sure of, but I do think Will Borgen is a good player. He's a good, solid defenseman. He's not a great one. He's not some elite kind of high-end top 4 caliber defenseman, but he is quite good, and I definitely think can be a solid, reliable, decent second pairing defenseman. I don't think you want to have him on your second pair if you're going for the cup alongside Carson Soucy, but I think he's capable of being a number 4 kind of defenseman on a really, really good team. He's just a really solid kind of all-around defenseman, can break the puck out, decent skater, can lay the body a bit there, block some shots, just be a good kind of reliable defenseman. He's nothing too flashy, but just does a good kind of solid game there. He's going to be, I think, a good defenseman to have for quite some time now, and picking him up and him just being a kind of solid, reliable guy, I think was something this team needed. So adding him in there to the mix, I think, was a really good move there. They ended up trading away Kaapo Kakko, of course, for Will Borgen and a couple draft picks. And at the end of the day, I definitely think that trade was worth it, especially now that he's on a pretty reasonable, like $4.1 million cap hit for the next 5 or so seasons. I think that contract is pretty great when you take a look at what guys like, Cody Ceci and Ryan Lindgren got with their respective teams. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And also, if you want to help the channel even more, definitely comment down below your thoughts on today's video and on certain players maybe you think could take a big step up or another step up in their game. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and bye.